Ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hearts and hands together and welcome the president and founder of War Child, Dr. Samantha Nutt.
Oh my goodness, thank you so much. Please, honestly, please sit down. I haven't said anything yet. You don't even know what I'm going to say yet. I don't think I can beat that, Miriam. You are an absolute inspiration, and it is an honor to work with you and to know you. It is such a privilege to have such a formidable team throughout the world who are giving back and leading and pioneering our programs in ways that I could never have imagined. It's just awe-inspiring. Thank you to all of you for being here and for supporting us and bringing some rock and roll fundraising to this evening. Now, I want to begin with a quick recap of the lessons that I took away from last year. The first one was this: everyone wants this thing to be shorter, because some of you have busy lives and apparently weak bladders. I swear to God, I will be quick up here. The second, and this is also very, very important, do not wear a strapless gown, unless you want to look naked in every press shot, like this one. And I do see why that was a problem now. However, it did solidify Victor's reputation as the most fun banker at a party. So everybody wins. Randy, I'm not sure it should be a star on the Walk of Fame. I think the Walk of Shame is slightly more appropriate at this point in time. Now, tonight we come together to mark War Child's 25th year. Celebrate is the wrong word. I had certainly hoped for a better word by this point. That word was redundant. Because if we were able to use that word, it would mean things are getting better. Instead, the demand for our expertise has expanded beyond anything that I might have imagined. The last few years alone have brought devastating conflicts threatening the lives of millions of people. In Sudan, for example, where we have had operations for more than 20 years, 13 million people are currently at risk of acute starvation. Without a doubt, this is the worst humanitarian crisis in the world right now. And yet, this war has been tragically overshadowed and overlooked. There have been no campus protests, no calls for action, no social media campaigns for those being brutalized in genocidal atrocities in Darfur. Instead, the humanitarian appeal for Sudan remains at less than a quarter funded right now at the end of this year. They are the victims, the latest victims of the world's selective outrage and compassion. And I know that this isn't easy to hear, but it lies at the heart of what we have been doing now for a quarter century. We pay attention to the people and places others have the luxury of forgetting. Afghanistan, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Sudan, Yemen, to name just a few. And so we don't chase the next crisis, hoping to ride donor tailwinds, which is why events like these are so critically important. Because you see, your support, your trust in us, your shared conviction that protecting the most vulnerable children from war means investing in the drivers of peace and social stability. And we do that through integrated programming targeting education, economic opportunity, self-determination, justice, women's empowerment and agency. You heard about some of that from Miriam. Food security, community reconciliation, holistic programming, and that you believe in us, that you're here tonight, is what makes this work possible. And believe me, it is the only antidote to war that we will ever see in our lifetimes. 25 years ago, we emerged as a humanitarian organization determined to do things differently. And what I've learned from those experiences from those years is this: be the best at what you do for as long as you can, because lasting change in the lives of those living with war is only achieved through consistency. Thank you. We are now, for example, the single largest provider of refugee education in Uganda. Tens of thousands of previously out-of-school children and youth are completing their education through our catch-up learning programs, which are quickly becoming the international gold standard. Education, thank you. And that's thanks to women like Miriam and Alfred, who some of you met last year. Education breeds ambition, optimism, and self-reliance, which is what those living with war need most of all. And the second thing I've learned is that even if the pervasive threat of war has not yet solidified our redundancy as an organization, we must always work towards that goal. And this is why our emphasis is on our local staff, who know better than anyone else, certainly better than me, what their communities need to recover. Bold, courageous, and experienced women like Miriam and our Ugandan team, but also, for example, in Afghanistan, where half of our staff out of 170 people are women. And that is surprising to some in the face of Taliban edicts banning women from working and speaking in public. But I was there just a couple of months ago. I wasn't wearing this. Every day, women and their young children form lines in front of our community centers because it is the only place where they can access the skills and support that they desperately need. And the first thing that they do when they walk through that door is shed their burqas. And it is profoundly moving. Thank you. It is profoundly moving to bear witness to this quiet act of solidarity and resistance. Over 99% of War Child staff throughout the world are local to the countries in which we operate. And what they ask of us, what they demand of us more than anything else, is that we believe in them and that we listen. It is a remarkable, wonderful realization to wake up and understand that, yes, we may have started something 25 years ago. Me, Eric, Chantel, Denise, Rain, all of these extraordinary people who came together to help us build this thing. But it isn't ours. It is all of ours. It is in the optimism of children in our catch-up learning in DRC and Uganda. It is in the pride of women in our farming and food security programs in South Sudan, who are now the first women chiefs in their communities. And it is in the understated defiance of teenage girls in Afghanistan learning computer skills for the first time through our training initiatives. Sometimes there are setbacks. Priorities change, aid dollars are cut. The trend right now in our sector is to write one big check to a large agency with great offices in New York and Geneva and London, who then take a hefty overhead allocation before subcontracting the work to groups like ours on the ground, with the proviso that we cannot recover any administrative costs, not even to pay our local staff, even though our overhead rate is less than 12% of our annual budget, which is incredibly lean for the sector. And I gotta tell you, it's tough. It is tough to the point of being agonizing for Dara and myself and our teams. It is tough to make the calculations around whether you can afford to accept a grant and expand your reach to hundreds of thousands more kids, because you simply don't know where the money is going to come from to make up that shortfall. Let me tell you, when no one wants to pay to keep the lights on, organizations die in the dark. People ask me all the time, what's the hardest part of this job? And no, you know what? It wasn't the time we almost died in the DRC. And it wasn't the car ambushes Eric and I survived early on, and there were a few. And it certainly isn't the nights spent shaking as bombs and gunfire erupt all around, because you know what? That is what war is. And I know how lucky I am to have survived. Our staff in many corners of the world have lived through far worse. No. The hardest part of the job is pulling into a makeshift camp for Darfurian refugees, as I did along the border, it was in southern Sudan, with our southern Sudanese team earlier this year, as women and children ran towards our vehicles. And a young woman approached us and she said, I know War Child Canada. I was in your education program in El Janina for many years. El Janina is in Darfur, and our work there benefited hundreds of thousands of women and children before the RSF forces lay waste to the area last year. And this young woman explained that after completing our catch-up learning program, she had started medical school, and she had just written her last exams when she was forced to flee. She wasn't even sure if she had passed. And she certainly didn't know whether her family was still alive. Walking around that camp that day, people were starving. They were exhausted. They were traumatized. Many of the women and girls had witnessed the mass extermination of all of the boys and men in their villages before being subjected to horrific sexual violence. But seeing us there with our local country director, Emmanuel, who is Southern Sudanese, and his team, this young girl turned to us and she said, War Child was always there for us in Darfur. I knew you would not forget us. I knew you would come. And that's the hard part. It is the crushing weight of expectation. But that's it, right? That's what it means. To be there when it's hard. To be there when others are not. To be there because we need to be. Because it is the only way to defy the disturbing dehumanization that has been ripping us apart in recent years, including here at home. That's why we have been doing this work for 25 years. And with your help, that is why we will keep doing it for as long as it takes for the world to no longer need an organization called War Child. Thank you very much. Now, thank you very much. It is my distinct privilege and pleasure to welcome to the stage Lane, the auctionista, to lead us through the next most interesting and compelling part of our journey together.